The world in which we live today has become more complex than our parents ever imagined. As our world becomes more of a global marketplace, and as traditional roles are dramatically shifting, a unique opportunity is presented, a chance for a new paradigm in our personal and professional lives. However, we may discover the new paradigm may not be so new after all. Maybe people from more diverse backgrounds will have greater global opportunities, which raises the question, what will you do to manage the new paradigm of diversity? For organizations to survive economically, organizations must help to create and support a culture that represents individuality and supports the local needs of a community. Organizations that recognize the individual as human assets understand the concept of diversity. In the book Managing Diversity, written by Dr. Michelle Moore Barak, a professor at the University of Southern California, she states, to alleviate both social and economic tensions in society as a whole and as reflected within the workforce, work organizations must learn to not only remove barriers, but to actively encourage full participation of members of diverse groups in society. The social identity theory involves a process of self-categorization, along with an attachment of value to the particular social category. Based on Dr. Barak's research, she identifies that social identification leads to the activities that are similar with a group's collective identity. The question that is raised is, what happens when a person is not easily recognized to be a part of a particular social category? According to the social identity theory, people tend to classify themselves into social categories that have meaning for them. This shapes the way individuals interact with others from their own identity group and from other groups. So another question that is raised is, do people desire to belong to groups that enjoy distinct and positive identities? People who belong to groups who are perceived as having a higher social status will accept and include people they consider to be like them, while excluding those who they do not believe not to be like them. Managing diversity is more than just a workplace issue. These issues are an important psychological process, such as self-esteem, depression, anxiety, and a general perception that one's life has meaning. More specifically, for members of disadvantaged groups who are stigmatized, may suffer the psychological consequences of being excluded. The need to be included in social groups is a strong motivator in human behavior. In the book The Legacy of Luna, written by Julia Butterfly Hill, the story of a woman who lived in a redwood tree 2 years in California to preserve it and Stafford, the town nearby. This well-written book is filled with messages of diversity, inclusion and exclusion, perception and stereotypes. Julia Butterfly describes her journey personally and environmentally.
tandem, and poverty is a handmaid. Those who are poor and powerless to break out of their poverty are also those who by and large are non-white, non-Western, third world. Poverty and powerlessness are intertwined in color, in race. Discrimination and exploitation feed into each other today under global capitalism. We are back to primitive accumulation, plunder on a world scale. Only this time, the pillage is accompanied by aid, sustained by expert advice, and underpinned by programs and policies that perpetuate dependency. The IMF, the World Bank, structural adjustment programs, general agreement on tariff and trade, GATT, are just a few of the organizations.
Summarizes broad demographic trends spell more diversity in the global workplace as the world adapts to a new age in which most children survive to adulthood and most adults survive to old age. For industrialized countries, the biggest impetus for workforce diversity will come from population stabilization and population aging. Countries will choose between growing the labor workforce through immigrants or through employing more non-traditional workers. Either choice will increase diversity in the workplace. In developing countries, diversity will come from population growth as foreign employers arrive to tap an underemployed and presumably less demanding workforce, or as governments seek new forms of employment to provide jobs for their growing numbers. Aside from these demographic dynamics, widespread improvement in the education over the last century has created a more highly educated and thus more aspiring workforce around the world. In the developed world, working-age people are knowledgeable about their rights and how to make sure they are observed. In the developing world, awareness of individual and group rights is one more lesson being learned from more advanced economies. This trend alone is probably sufficient to ensure that issues related to diversity will touch more and more workplaces in the years to come.
Racism and imperialism